Hey, welcome back to the God Behind Bars podcast. I'm excited about our next guest. In fact, his name is Damon West. Spent time in the Texas Department of Corrections, was even referred to as the Texas or the Dallas Al Capone. USA Today has written many articles on him and compared his life to the movie Shawshank Redemption and now Forrest Gump. And he has an amazing story, speaks all over the country, sharing his story. And so, Damon, it's good to have you.
Jake, man, thanks a lot for having me today, brother. And yeah, it's a good introduction. It gives people a wide range, man. You go from the in-between Andy Dufresne from Shawshank to Forrest Gump, right?
Yes.
There's a big range of what that story's about.
Well, we're excited to have you. I'm excited to hear more. For those that don't know you or haven't heard your story before, maybe you want to just start from the beginning and kind of what got you to the point of incarceration, and then we'll talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, let's kind of start from the beginning. I grew up in Texas. I grew up in a little town called Port Arthur, Texas. Came from a great two-parent home. My mom and my dad were married for 55 years, you know. My mom was a school teacher and a nurse. My dad was a sports writer. I was a good student and a great athlete, man. And this is Texas. We love high school football in Texas.
Yeah.
I was a 3-year starting quarterback at a 5A school. Grew up under the Friday Night Lights. Got a scholarship to play football at the University of North Texas, Division I college football. And by the time I'm 20, I'm a starting quarterback on a Division I team. So I really thought I had arrived. My whole identity was wrapped up in being a football player, but life has a way of giving us these days that I call fork in the roads. The fork in the roads are the big days. And everybody listening to this right now, you know what the fork in the road is because you've been there. It's that day where you get knocked down, you get up, but you got to make a choice. You either make the right choice, go the right way, or the wrong choice, go the wrong direction. My fork in the road happened on September 21st, 1996. We're playing Texas A&M that day. Beautiful Saturday in College Station, man. I'm 20, and I'm driving my team down the field against the Aggies. Third play of the game, I go down, career and an injury, never play college football again. And I get up to this fork in the road, and football's gone, and that's when the drugs come in. The very definition of being an addict is when you cannot live life on life's terms. And addicts, we do things like we give up our goals to meet our behaviors. That's what addicts do. Cocaine, ecstasy, pills. Pretty functional addict back then. I graduate college in 99. I move off to Washington, D.C. I work in the United States Congress. I work for a guy running for president. Then I worked for a Wall Street bank in Dallas, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. I was a stockbroker. And it was at that job as a broker in 2004 that my life and the lives of so many other innocent people were forever changed. And that was the day when another broker introduced me to meth one time. And, man, Jake, touching meth was like touching a live wire. Smoked it one time, instantly hooked, just like that. And I couldn't give everything away fast enough. I gave away my job, my home, my car, my savings account, my family, my tethering to God. And the people listening to this right now, you know exactly where I am, man, because you've been there before, too, a lot of you. I gave up my goals to meet my behaviors, and now I'm living on the streets of Dallas. The streets, homeless, living in dope houses, sleeping in cars. I become a criminal, shoplifting, breaking into cars, breaking into storage units. Then I start breaking into people's homes. Now, Jake, this is where the crimes get serious because when I broke into my victims' homes, I didn't just steal property from my victims. I stole something way more valuable from my victims. I stole their sense of security. This is something I can't replace and they can't get back. You know, and I can't even apologize to my victims. In Texas, it's a felony to apologize to your victims. They send you back to prison. So my victims have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But after 3 years of committing property crimes against the people of Dallas, the Dallas SWAT team on July 30th, 2008, put an end to the Uptown burglaries. That was the day that SWAT arrested me. Or the shift in mindset that we're going to talk about today, the shift in mindset that looks for the opportunity in adversity in life. Because I believe inside of every adverse, difficult situation, there's an opportunity there for you to grow and become a better version of you. Jake, I look back at July 30th, 2008. That's not just a day I was arrested. That was the day I was rescued. I get pulled out of a situation I can't get myself out of. The angels in my story don't have wings. They have assault rifles and shields and helmets, right? They're coming through the windows. They bust the door off the hinges. They pull me in that world. They arrest me that day. They take me to Dallas County Jail. My bond is set at $1.4 million. This is a no bond, man. You can't make a bond that high. My trial takes place 10 months later. 10 months, man. If they can get you in a courtroom in 10 months, that's called the rocket docket. That means they want you in a courtroom. That means you're in trouble. May 18th, 2009. That's the day I'll never forget, Jake. On May 18th, 2009, I'm standing in front of a jury in Dallas, and the jury, these 12 men and women from Dallas, have just listened to a 6-day criminal trial. And the crime that I'm standing trial for, this isn't a burger case. This is organized crime. This is RICO.
Yeah, because you had others involved.
Oh, yeah. We had a whole group. It was a bunch of other meth addicts. I'd say it's about a dozen other meth addicts, young and old, male and female, black and white, and everything in between, because drugs and addiction do not discriminate.
Yeah.
But we indiscriminately and without reservation broke into the homes of dozens and dozens of people all over Dallas, right? But on May 18th, 2009, I'm standing trial for not just all my actions, but the actions of the entire group. That's how organized crime works. The jury heard so much overwhelming evidence of my guilt, and I'm guilty of everything, man. I did it all. And the thing about it is that you have two different kinds of crimes in Texas that they can sentence you for. You have aggravated crimes where people get hurt, and you have non-aggravated crimes where no one gets physically hurt. This is a non-aggravated organized crime case. And I know that I'm going to prison. I just don't know for how long. But the jury came back with their verdict in 10 minutes.
Wow.
10 minutes, man. It means they smoked you. And I knew it when I walked in. The judge read my sentence out loud. Damon Joseph West, you are hereby sentenced to 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Jake, 65 years is a life sentence in the state of Texas. The jury gave me life that day, right down the road from where we're recording right now.
And so what's your emotions in that moment? Like, obviously, to hear that, like, you knew you're guilty. I think a lot of people recognize that they did the crime that they're obviously on trial for, but I don't think everyone, or anyone for that matter, fully ingests hearing like you're going away for life. What do you feel in that moment?
Yeah, first thing I thought about was my mom and my dad. They're in the front row of the court. My mom gasped aloud when the judge read the sentence. The sound only a mother can make when she hears her son get a life sentence in prison. And then everything sped up. The sheriff is on me, the bailiff is on me, they're escorting me out. I lock eyes with my mom on the way out of the courtroom, and I'm like, and I said, Mom, I'm sorry. They whisked me out of there. They put me in this little side room. It's got a bulletproof glass. They told me to wait. A few minutes later, my mom and my dad were escorted in on the other side of the glass. They're giving my parents one last visit with me before I go to prison. Jake, they feel sorry for my parents because I just got life.
Yeah.
My father can't talk. He's in stunned disbelief that his son, who once had all this promise in life, just received a life sentence in prison. So my mom does all the talking, and she has a conversation with me that day, Jake. She said, she's telling me debts in life demand to be paid, and you just got hit with one heck of a bill from the state of Texas. But you did everything they said you did, so you're going to have to go and pay that debt to society. She said, you owe Texas that debt. Now you owe your father and I debt too, because we gave you all the opportunity to love and support, to be anything in life, and this is the path you chose. Here's a debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type of gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said, that's not going to work. You were never raised to be a racist. You're not starting that stuff now. She said, you will not get any tattoos while you're inside that prison. And Jake, that's why you don't see any ink on it, man. I spent almost 10 years in a level 5 maximum security prison in Texas. No ink, no tattoos. But because my mom told me that day, she said, Damon, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man that we raised, or don't come back to us at all. She says, get on God's back like footprints in the sand. When I was a kid growing up, my mom, who's a devout Christian woman, right? She has prayer plaques and crosses all over the house. You can't escape God in my mom's house. We were in church every Sunday, too. I was raised in a great home.
And I know she played a huge part in this whole story.
Huge part in this whole story.
A praying mama.
A praying mama, man. Yeah. And so, above my bed where I grew up was footprints in the sand. She had put it up there, and while I was in Dallas County Jail waiting trial, she would talk to me about that prayer plaque. She's like, just remember, get on God's back, get on God's back. And that's one of the things she's reminding me of that last day when I get sentenced to life in prison. Go to prison, get on Christ's back, let him carry you through this. Only one set of footprints in a prison, they're not yours. The guards take me away. I got 2 months before the prison bus comes to get me. Man, I'm frantically asking every guy that's been to prison before, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And Jake, everybody's telling me the same thing, right? You got to get into a gang. Like, you're going to the worst part of prison, man, where the lifers go. You have to get into a gang. But there was this one guy that was so different, man, this older black man named Muhammad. Muhammad's what you call a career criminal, man. He's in and out of prison his entire life. Most positive guy I've ever met. Had a smile on his face everywhere he went. So every morning he comes to my cell, my bunk. He kind of picks me up like a ray of sunshine in there. And so this one particular morning he comes up. He's got a cup of coffee in his hands. He had a smile on his face. He's like, Wes, I've been watching you. I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and dummies. Talking about you got to get into a gang. He said, man, don't listen to these fools. Let me tell you what prison's going to be like. And that's what he's telling me. the first thing you need to know, prison's all about race. Race runs the whole institution in there. He said all the inmates want it that way. Everybody separates by their own race in there. He says, so what I'm telling you is you're going to fight the white gangs first when you get in there because you're white. If you survive the white gangs, you'll fight the black gangs. The white gangs will send the black gangs after you. If you survive all that, you'll earn the right to walk alone. He said the strongest man in prison always walks alone. He told me the truth about fighting. He said you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. Some days you win, some days you lose. He said it's okay when you lose. Just get up. And that's what he's telling me, get back up. But Jake, when he's telling me it's back 2009, man, I'm looking back at this guy like a deer in headlights. All this violence and terror I'm about to walk into.
Yeah, you're scared.
Oh, I'm scared to death, man.
Yeah. I'm scared thinking of it.
That's when he's like, West, he said, let me break this down for you a different way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put into this pot of boiling water will be changed by the heat and the pressure inside this pot. I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here it is, Jake. This is when I first hear the story of the coffee bean. It's the summer of 2009, Dallas County Jail. 10 years before John Gordon and I write that worldwide bestseller called The Coffee Bean. So he said, first things first, if I put a carrot in the pot of boiling water, what happens to the carrot? And I'm like, the carrot turns soft. He's like, that's right, West. He said, but the carrot goes in the water really hard and firm, but the water of the prison turns the hard carrot soft and mushy and weak. You don't want to be a carrot. The egg, West. What happens to the egg in the pot of boiling water? I'm like, the egg is going to turn hard, man, like a hard-boiled egg. He said, that's right. The egg has a shell that protects it physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, that yolk, that heart becomes hard. He said, now, if your heart becomes hardened, you become incapable of giving or receiving love.
Yeah.
And if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you don't come back as someone your parents recognize. Then he asked me the question, Jake. He said, what about the coffee bean? What happened to the coffee bean in the pot of boiling water? And Jake, I didn't have an answer for him on that one. I didn't know what happened to a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water.
Yeah.
And that is when Muhammad, a man who looks nothing like me, a man who doesn't come from the same America that I come from, a man who doesn't believe the same things I believe in my own life, a black Muslim man from the streets of Dallas, Texas, a white middle-class Christian guy from a little town called Port Arthur, Texas. But this man who is so different than me is going to share with me one of the most important and transformational messages I've ever received in my entire life. And the moral to that is this. If you shut yourself off to other people because of their differences, different race, gender, ethnicity, religion, opinions, politics, if you close yourself off to people because of their differences, you may miss some of the most important lessons and some of the best friendships.
Wow.
Because Muhammad told me that day, he said, if I put a coffee bean in that same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you got to change the name of that water to coffee.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, the coffee bean, West, the smallest of the 3 things. He said, small like you, has the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power's inside the coffee bean.
Wow.
He said, just like the power's inside of you. And he's telling me, he's like, everything else in life is changed by the water in life. Carrots are changed by the water. Eggs are changed by the water, but not a coffee bean. The coffee bean is the only thing that changes the water because it's the change agent.
Wow.
If you want to come back somewhere your parents recognize, you got to be like that coffee bean. And in fact, the last words he ever says to me, it's Dallas County Jail, the summer of 2009. He's made bond. He's leaving county jail. The prison bus is going to come pick me up on that back dock. He has 4 words for me on the way out the door when he leaves. He said, hey, West, be a coffee bean. Jake, be a coffee bean. Those were the 4 words that says to change off in my life because those 4 words put the power back inside me. And if the power was inside me, it's not in the world around me, right? The criminal justice system, the guards, the other inmates, it was in me the whole time. And if I could keep the power inside me, I don't survive prison, I thrive in that prison. It was the ultimate message I'd ever heard that our world is created from the inside out, not the outside in. And I want everybody listening to this to understand the power's inside you. It's not what's going on around you right now where you're listening to this podcast. It's not what's going on in the free world out there. It's in you.
Yeah.
Because the power of Christ is inside you. And if you can keep that power inside you, you don't survive this adversity. You thrive in this adversity. I know this for a fact because I took that coffee bean message to one of the biggest pots of boiling water there is, a level 5 maximum security prison in the state of Texas called the Mark Stiles Unit. Stiles, man.
Which that's the very facility that you were incarcerated in.
That's it, man. That's where I did my time.
And when that bus pulls up, obviously, everything that you've just been taught. It kind of, I'd imagine, like there's a billion things running through your mind, and you will pull into that gate. Like, what you step off that bus, what's your first thought? What's your first feeling?
Scared to death. And I know they're going to separate me out because in Texas, lifers live with other lifers. And lifers on the Styles unit back then, we lived on the building called 7 Building. 7 Building has 432 men. So it's a big building. And I'm going to 7 Building. And I meet the first guy I meet in prison. And that's actually a guy I stay in touch with now that I'm out. His name is Stuart Busby. And Stuart Busby, I know Stuart is listening to this right now. And he's a good guy doing a lot of good things in the Texas prison system right now. He's the first guy I meet when I come off the bus, white guy, and he's like trying to lace me up as we're walking in the hallway together. And he's actually trying to get the guard to make me his cellmate, because he sees the fear in my eyes. But he doesn't get to come into the building with me that day. And man, right when I walk in that building, 20 minutes later, I'm fighting a guy from the Aryan Brotherhood. Guy mops the floor for me, right? But I showed up and I fought and I lost. And that's what fighting looked like for me, man. And in the first 2 months, man, I get in dozens of fights and I lose most of the fights. But I win the fights because Muhammad told me the truth about fighting. You don't have to win all those fights. You got to fight all those fights. The same is true in life. No one counts your wins and losses, Jake. No one even knows that number but you. But everybody's watching to see in life if you're going to get back up. And that's all you have to do to win is just keep getting back up. Get knocked down 8 times, get up 9. So after the first couple of months, the violence was finally over. I'd earned my right to exist. The threat to my physical safety was gone. But 2 months into prison, I realized I had a bigger threat to my life going on, and it wasn't physical. It was internal. Spiritual warfare.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, I bet even from the standpoint of I think everybody in any life situation, your intention are good, but then obviously life is thrown at you and how you respond. It's easy to get to a place of bitterness or defeat or, man, I don't even know why I'm here. All the positivity goes out the window. I can imagine that's what was happening with you.
Yeah. One of the last conversations I had with Muhammad in county jail, I asked him, I said, man, what am I going to find more of when I get there? He said, eggs. You're going to find more eggs. He said the egg is a natural evolution of any human being in any difficult situation. He said, you're going in one of the most difficult situations there is on earth. He said, the truth is, you'll probably become an egg too. Muhammad was right, man. Muhammad was right about everything he said. It was a conversation I was having with my first cellmate in prison. This is a guy named Armando, man. Armando, he's about 5'4". He's a little Hispanic guy, a little bank robber from San Antonio, Texas. He's, again, another guy doing great things in the Texas prison system. You ever heard of the Field Minister Program?
I have not.
He's an inmate chaplain. These are guys that are the elite class of inmates in there. They send them to a seminary for 4 years on the Darrington unit where they get a 4-year a real bachelor's degree in theology. And then they ship them off to another unit to become an inmate chaplain. Kind of something that breaks the barrier down between the inmates and the guards. Because a chaplain technically is a guard, right? They carry gas, they carry handcuffs. But Texas understood that if we can turn some of these guys in there with the longer sentences and we can get these guys to become chaplains themselves, train them to be a chaplain, it changes the whole dynamic of prison. And that's what Armando has become now in this life, that he's going to be there for a while. But great guy.
Yeah,
but
we've got some of those similar programs in Florida and things like that. And we've seen the success of it as well, of these guys, one, giving them purpose, many of them who will spend the rest of their life behind bars, but giving them purpose, giving them value, allowing them to fulfill their calling while still incarcerated, and the importance of that. Because obviously it's one thing for a chaplain or me or whoever to say something, but when it comes from your peers, it just goes so much further.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. When you're in prison and somebody comes in that's already been there before, or somebody's another inmate, they know what it's like to stay in the line of commissary. They know what it's like to get that call from the chapel that says, hey, man, they're looking for you down there because someone in your family died. That's what the chapel calls, An inmate knows another inmate's been through the same issues they've been through. And but I also think that all these field minister programs, they probably all came from the same place in Louisiana. A guy named Burl Kane was the chaplain. I mean, he was the warden at Angola. Burl's a good friend of mine. He's a good dude.
Yeah, we partner with the same seminary, New Orleans Theological Baptist.
Yeah, so they all came from the same place. I think every state got what Burl did, and they understood. Burl changed Angola, you know. And that was the thing. Like, whenever people understood that we can have this peace, this joy, serenity, it's like this. You hit the nail on the head a while ago, and I want to make sure we go over this point again, because there's some people listening to this, you don't have an exit date. There's some people listening to this that are never going to get out, or some people that you're 20 years away from your parole date. Listen, your purpose is to be a backstop in that prison for the people that are just passing through, right? Because some of these people that come through prison without these big sentences, they're the ones that are least likely to change sometimes because they know they don't have to do a lot of change on a short sentence. But who better to run into them and tell them, hey, man, this is the better path. This is the better way. You're most qualified to help the person you once were. This friend of mine named Ed Milet told me that. You're most qualified to help the person you once were. So if you're one of those people in prison right now, you're incarcerated, and you don't have an exit date, or one's a long way away, just know that God's using you right now.
Yeah.
You're the backstop, because that person passing through, they're going to go back out there. And they may be, pumping gas next to one of your relatives one day. They may be in line in Walmart next to one of your relatives one day, or somebody else's relative. You may avoid someone else from becoming a victim and stop a crime from happening by being that backstop in prison. So God's got a use for us everywhere we go, Jake.
Yeah.
It's just be willing to accept the role he has to play for us and not the role we think we're supposed to play. So
I love that. Going back to your story, you were saying that you were dealing with spiritual warfare. You began to become the egg. If you want
so I'm having a conversation with Armando that night, and I'm struggling. We're cellmates, and I couldn't have asked for a better cellmate. He's kind of guided me through. This is a whole foreign world to me, man. I've never a white middle class guy in America, man. I've never even fathomed what prison would be like on the inside, especially the part of prison I go to with the lifers. And so, but Armando's like this guy. He's showing me everything around, and so I can go to him and talk to him. One night we're in our cell. Now I'm like, man, I'm struggling, man. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I can become a coffee bean. He's like, well, what's a coffee bean? So for the first time in my life, I tell another person the story of the coffee bean, and he got it immediately. And he's like, the reason why you can't be a coffee bean is because the way you think. He said, your thoughts control your actions. He said, right now you think prison is a punishment when you should be thinking prison is your opportunity. Jake, this took me back, man.
Yeah.
Prison is an opportunity, man. I'm here for life. And what are you talking about, man? I was like, I can't wrap my brain around what you just said. He said, this is your opportunity. Your opportunity to work on yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You can become the best version of yourself possible while you're here. And it lights out that night when the guard gets done counting our cell. He peeks his head down from the top bunk. He's like, psst, West, what are you prepared to do tomorrow with your opportunity? Jake, this little dude refused to call prison a punishment, and Christ stuck him in a cell with me.
Yeah.
Man, proof that in life, the messengers can come to us from anywhere, right? And the messengers don't always look like you. They don't come from the same back. One of mine is a black Muslim man in county jail, right? Another one, this Hispanic bank robber serving life in my cell. I mean, yours today, when you're listening to this former incarcerated man from Texas on parole for the rest of his life, God can use any messenger to get through to you, but will you be receptive to all of his messengers to get all of his messages? That's the trick, man. Flipping that switch in your head and understanding that everyone is a messenger. Everyone's a teacher in life, Jake. Some people are there to teach you how to do things the right way. Some people are to be the example of what not to do. And it's forming this philosophy in life that everyone's a teacher. I was very open-minded in there. My sponsor in my program recovery, he always tells me that your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So my mind became very open. And, I got up the next day in prison, and my life changed forever because I look up at the ceiling. I'm like, my feet at the cold crank for the prison cell. I look up at the ceiling. I'm like, all right, Christ, thanks for this opportunity. I don't really believe it.
Yeah.
But that morning, I took one small step of action into this new life that I'm living today. And that's one of the things I want to get across in this interview today, why it was so important to be here today, because I want everyone out there listening to know that you're a brand. Everybody's a brand, and everybody out here in the free world, they talk about branding and what's your brand. You're a brand. You're building a brand right now in prison that's going to go with you for the rest of your life. Why not build the best brand possible, right? Like Armando said, you got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to become the best version of you. Build your brand now. A successful reentry begins the day that you walk into prison. And if it doesn't happen that day, make it happen today. Start building that brand of who you are. The guy that I am now, the people that these corporations and sports teams bring in to speak, that person was being born inside of a dungeon, man. In a dungeon. But you can bloom where you're planted. You can bloom anywhere you are. And you're a brand. So build your brand. What does your brand look like? When you have interaction with other inmates, correctional officers, wardens, chaplains, people like that, what do they say about you when you walk away? Hey, that's a pretty good guy, or he belongs right where he's at.
Yeah.
You have the power to change you. That's it. You have the power to work on you. Why not take this opportunity? And that's what I did, Jake. I got up every day in a dungeon. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. But I cracked the code on how to be a coffee bean. And that's what I did. I started developing the rules about being a coffee bean. Like, the first rule was about having positive body language, Smile. Your smile is so powerful, Jake. When people see you smile, they smile back. Chain reaction of positive energy with the expression in your face. Muhammad told me, he said, you either infect the rooms that you walk into with your negative energy or you affect the room with positive energy. Infect, affect. Yeah, man. You're the disease of the cure everywhere you go, right? He told me, he said, everybody in life puts out energy, negative or positive energy, and whatever kind of energy we put out, we attract back. The law of attraction. And so that's what he's telling me. If you want to walk around prison with a mean look on your face, you're going to attract some mean people to your face. But if you walk around with a smile on your face, the other coffee beans will find you. And that's how energy works. Put out the best energy. One of the things I did when I was in prison is I looked around and I understood this thing called servant leadership. There was a guy named Joe Tatoris used to come into prison on Mondays nights in the chapel. He'd fellowship with us, and he would always talk about servant leadership. He said servant leadership is helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise everybody to a different station of life. He said when we help other people grow, we grow too. So I got back to my pod, and I'm looking around this room, and I'm like, how can I serve these men around me? The answer came to me. I'd been a very privileged guy in life, Jake. I had a college degree when I went to prison. I came from a great family. I understood what a community looked like. That's what I started doing. I started helping these guys understand what a healthy community is. A healthy community is when we lift each other up. A healthy community says, hey, man, that trash that's out there in front of our house, I'm going to pick that up. Even if it's not my trash, I'm going to pick that trash up. That was the example I started setting. I opened up a free tutoring service in there. I taught guys how to read and write. I get them ready for the GED test. So if they ever got out of prison, they could be a better husband or a better father one day.
Wow.
I wanted to transfer my skills to the rest of the pod. That's what a healthy community looks like. If you're listening to this right now and you're sitting there wondering, how do I build this community where I live? Go out there and show people what your talent is. Make it available to other people. And then when other people start saying, hey, that's good, your talent's this, here's my talent, and everybody can use my talent. This pod became a place where people were like, hey, how do we serve other people? And it's almost like there was a competition for people to serve each other, you know? That was one of the ways the parole board took notice of Damon West. I understood about control. This was a big one for me because when you go to prison, you lose control of a lot of things. I mean, you don't even get to make decisions. You're not going to decide what you're going to eat.
Yeah.
You're not going to decide when you're going to eat. Shower, someone's going to tell you when to do that. Go to the bathroom, you can ask permission for that. So the real big break I learned about control was at a recovery meeting. I got into a 12-step program recovery I told you in prison. I learned how to pray in this program recovery. My life as an addict, and anybody listening to this that's an addict, you understand addiction is the most selfish thing you can be. Addicts, we want what we want when we want it. We don't care what's in our way. I broke into people's houses for my addiction, you know. I was a bad guy. Addiction's selfish. To be in recovery is selfless. And I believe every addict needs a program recovery. I don't know what your program recovery is. Mine happens to be a 12-step program called AA. I don't speak for AA, but that's the one I chose. Choose yours and go in that path. But when I got into this program recovery, I started working the steps. I learned how to pray. And I got this prayer I've been praying every day since 2011 when I got into recovery. I get up in the morning and I ask Christ for two things. I say, hey, Christ, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize that when I see it. Don't want to miss whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Amen. That's all I pray for, Jake. And I have found that if I take care of what Christ needs me to do for him, he takes care of my needs too, not my wants. Needs and wants are very, very different things. My needs have all been met because I'm meeting the needs of what Christ needs me to do, and that's what we're here for, to do his will, not ours. And so I went to this, every recovery meeting, we start off with this beautiful prayer called the Serenity Prayer. You've heard the Serenity Prayer, right? Yeah. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I go into this meeting that Wednesday morning, and
the most important part is that last part, the wisdom to know the difference.
That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this guy does a diagram that day. The free world God, we'll call him Ray, protect his anonymity. He says, today, Damon, we're going to diagram the Serenity Prayer. So he draws a line from one side of the chalkboard to the other in the chapel. He said, the line of the chalkboard is God's line. Bigger than the line of the chalkboard. It's infinitely long, right? He says the first part of the prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. He said the things you can't change, Damon, are on God's line. Every time you touch them on God's line, you hurt yourself and you hurt other people because you're not God, and God doesn't need your help doing his job. He said, stay off of God's line. You got your own line, man. He goes and erases a little inch out of God's line, and he held his fingers up an inch apart for the entire room to see. He said, if God's line's infinitely long, that's your line. You got an inch. He called the little 1-inch line humility. He said humility is when we're right-sized. And when we are right-sized, we can be useful to other people again. He said the second part of the prayer, the courage to change the things I can. He said the things you can change are on your little 1-inch line, and there's 4 things God gives you to work on every day. These are the 4 things you have control over: what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. What you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. And he said if it's not one of those 4 things, God's got it, not you. That's what he said. The last part of the prayer was the most important, is the wisdom to know the difference between that big line and your little line. Jake, I can't tell you how many times a day right now in my life, right now in the free world, today even, I've walked up to things in life I looked at, I said, hey, you know what? That's not on my line. And I walked off. 10 years out of prison, one of the biggest questions I get from people that are in prison or people that are getting out, how are you doing parole like that? Man, I just know what's on my line, what's not on my line. Once you understand that, the world becomes a pretty simple place, you know? You let God take care of his stuff, and you work on yours. And this is why it's so big for me in prison, because once I started committing my time is the most precious resource you have. And people listen to this, you're doing time. I know what it's like to do time. I got it, man. I've been there. I've done that. I got a life sentence. Once time is gone, it's gone for good. So you can't think about the time you've lost, but you got to think about the time you have in front of you. You got to use this time wisely, because all the money in the world won't buy one more second of that stuff called time. It's not for sale. You can't buy anymore. When you spend your time on things you can control, your life takes off. Your relationship with Christ takes off. Things in your life start happening around you. You're like, wow, man, I cannot believe this is going on. That's the God lane that you're in, man. And that's what happens when you start letting God do his thing and you do your thing.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. This is Jake Bodine, one of your hosts here, and I just wanted to encourage you to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to the God Behind Bars podcast, and then set your notifications to be alerted every time we upload a new episode so that you can be up to date in hearing what God is doing in and through the men and women that are behind bars. Continue listening to this episode of the God Behind Bars podcast.
I think one of the biggest things to understand is that your past doesn't define you. And that was when I got to prison, I started working recovery, and I've got my faith over here in my program recovery. They're parallel tracks that keep me on the right space in life. I realized that your past is your lesson. You learn from it, you teach other people with it. It's like the whole thing I said, you're most qualified to help the person you once were. The present is a gift. There's opportunities in front of you today. You got to take advantage of this thing. Here's the thing about opportunities is they don't always present themselves a second time. If you're not focused on today in the moment, you don't live in the moment, you're going to miss the opportunities of the moment. And the future is your motivation. And motivation is a very interesting thing, because you can be motivated in a good way or a bad way, right? I mean, so people ask me all the time, they're like, did you ever find Muhammad? And this is one of those motivational stories, because what I try to motivate myself every day is integrity. I try to keep that in front of everything I do. I think integrity is who you are when no one but God is watching you. When you can get away with doing the wrong thing, but you do the right thing anyway, right?
Yeah.
So in 2015, I was working as a chapel clerk at the Styles unit, and Chaplain Vance comes in that day. He was really excited. The prison chaplain, he said, "Hey, West, they're here for you." And I know who they are. It's the parole board. And man, Jake, look, 7 years into my prison sentence, there's no way I'm making that first parole, right? This is me trying to control God's stuff again, right? There's no way I'm not going to make it. I know I'm up for parole, but, I've already written off. In fact, in my mind, I'm going to do about a dime, maybe 15 on this life sentence before I go home, because that's what people with a non-aggravated life do. We do it about 10 or 15 years. I go to that parole office that day. And, I got a smile on my face, because that's what coffee beans do. We smile everywhere we go. I'm trying to affect this lady with my energy. And the lady for parole calls me, and she's pretty impervious to my smile. She's got my criminal file in front of her. She's flipped through the pages of my file for about 20 seconds. She slammed the file shut. She pushed it away. She said, "Mr. West, I came here today to really just kind of ask you one question about this parole thing." She's like, and we go over my story. She's like, "You had it all, but you threw it all away. You became a drug addict, a criminal, a thief. A jury in Dallas gave you life in prison for the things you did. But instead of letting that life sentence define you, you changed yourself inside this prison." She said, "The change was big. The change is real. But you didn't just change yourself. You changed this whole prison." So she's like, "Really, the question I want to know from you, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all," she said, "what would that be? Give it to me in one word." I fired her answer back at her, and I said, useful. Useful. The answer from the Serenity Prayer. Because when we are on our line, we want to focus on things, we can become useful to other people. That's where my answer came from for parole. November 16th, 2015, I walked out of a Texas prison.
Wow.
Now, I'm not free. You're not looking at a free man in front of you, Jake. I got a little more time left on parole. I'm on parole to the year 2073. So I got 48 more years from the day of this recording. But, man, I'm not in prison.
Yeah.
I'm out here. I've been on parole for 10 years. I got 48 more to go. Every month I go see my parole officer in Beaumont, a woman named Ms. Braggs, get my travel permits. I travel a lot. I travel over the world now, sharing the story of the coffee bean. And every time I go into that parole office to get my travel permits, I take a picture in front of that parole seal with a smile on my face, put it on social media for the world to see. People will comment, man, how can you smile like that? You're on parole for the rest of your life. I'm like, because I'm not in prison anymore. God got me out of that place, man. That was a door that God opened for me. And I'm telling you, man, when I walked out of prison, the day I walk out of prison, when I leave the prison gates, I see my parents in the parking lot. I'm running to them, and the voice in my head says, stop. And I know that voice, man. That's Christ. I've been listening to that voice the whole time I was in prison. Turn around, Damon. I turn around. I'm looking back at the gate. The guard's looking at me like, what are you doing? And this is what Christ says that day. You're going to work for me now, Damon. Put you through all this for a reason. You know that, man. It's how I show that I'm real. You're going to have the most incredible story ever as long as you work for me. Because the minute this becomes about you and not me, you're coming back to prison. You're a vessel, and I can find another vessel.
Yeah. Wow.
So let's get to work. And so, Jake, that's what I've been doing the whole time I've been out. And, I mean, the things that have happened in my life, I tell my wife, Jake, when I go speak in prisons, I'll be in a prison tonight speaking at the All Red unit. And inevitably, there will always be somebody that comes up to me that's an inmate and say, man, of all the incredible things, and we're not done talking about the incredible, there's more stuff that's going on in my life, but they'll say, of all the incredible things that have happened in your life, I want to know how you did that. They point at my wedding ring. When I was in prison, I used to lay in my bunk and have the same thoughts, man. Who's going to ever love me, man? Stuff I've done in life. And if I find someone to love me, their family's not going to love me, right? Man plans and God laughs, brother. I mean, because, man, I got an incredible family now. I became a husband. I became a stepfather. I've become a provider. In my family, with the speaking business, what I've been able to do is take the money that I've earned from speaking and create family businesses to create generational wealth, to change our family tree, man. Everybody in our family works for our companies now. We build these companies up, this construction company, demolition company. My in-laws work there. I mean, my mom. My mom and my dad have been married for 55 years. My dad died 2 years ago, colon cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, man. But he got to see me turn it around. And that was a big thing. And when my dad passed away, right before he passed away, he said, you got to take care of your mom now. And I said, yeah, Dad, I will. I didn't know what that meant, though, Jake. You know, she lives about 15 minutes from me. My wife and I just built a new home on this piece of land we bought. And it came to me one night through Christ, build your mom a home. And so that's what I did. My mom got to move in. I built my mom a home, Jake. Wow. She lives on my property. I see her every time I'm home, man. And I get to take care of my mom now. And I know a lot of people listening to this right now that's something they can hold on to, that there's a guy that has been where they've been and got to take care of mom. Moms are special, man.
Yeah. The
busiest visitation day of the year in prisons all over America is Mother's Day. The line's out the gate on Mother's Day, man. You can't get a table on Mother's Day. You can't stop a mother from getting to her child, right? And so to be able to do that for my mom, that's something I want everybody here, that somebody got out and was able to do it, man. It can be done. You know, because if you can touch your dream or see your dream, you know that your dream is real. And, you know, Jake, the stuff that's happened in my life, I got out and I wanted to go out and start sharing this story. But the problem is I'm an ex-con. And everybody listening to this, you know what that means, man. There's a stigma attached to you, you know. Because how many ex-cons that have come before me have burned the bridge to the ground? A lot. And that's the thing, y'all. Listening to this, I want you to understand, you have got to build that brand right now to become the person you want to be later in life, because you can't start building that person when you get out of prison. That never works for anybody. What works is when you start becoming that person now and you get out and you become that example that rehabilitation does work, right? And whenever I was in prison, there was a warden in there, my last warden. His name was Warden Carter, Warden Christopher Carter, who is now Director Carter of the chaplaincy and volunteers.
Does a lot for the Texas Department of Corrections.
Dude, this
Amazing
guy's
man.
incredible. He is. There's nobody more committed to going in there and serving. He shows up at graduation ceremonies. I mean, this guy's got a family, but his family doesn't seem as much as his prison family. He goes up and shows up to these services, the life coaches. I've got a class in the Texas prison system, the change agent prison curriculum. It's on the WIN unit in Texas. And he's helped shepherd this program along. And every 4 months we graduate a class. Carter's there at everything, man. He doesn't miss anything. He's there to serve. He's a servant leader. And he was like that when he was my warden, man. But he always told me, he said, West, he said, you're a good guy with a good heart. He said, I believe you're going to do good things. And when I got out of prison, I found Warden Carter, who's now Director Carter, and I said, man, here's my dream. Here's my plan. I want to go back in to prison, and I want to be a positive force for change. And he's been at the forefront of making sure that happens, man. He is the one that's really kind of paved the way. But again, he saw the change that I made in prison. He's not taking a chance on somebody. To him, it's not a gamble at all. He knows Damon West.
Yeah.
He saw who Damon West became. Everybody listening to this understand that you have the opportunity to transform yourself. You have the opportunity to take your biggest liability, be an ex-con, and turn it into your biggest asset, because you're sitting on one of the most incredible turnaround stories ever, right? If you can turn this situation around and become a success story, and success is measured in various ways, right? A success is someone that is a good father, someone that's a good husband, a good brother, a good mother, a good daughter, a good sister. That's a success. You don't have to be rich to be successful. In fact, I would argue that wealth is nothing to do with success. Success is who you are on the inside, your character, right? Build that character up now, so when you get out, you don't become the statistic. And the statistics tell us is that, most of the people that get out, over half the people that get out, go back again in the first 3 years. This is what I'm up against when I get out of prison, right? I've got this incredible story in the Mesh of the Coffee Bean. I want to go share it, but man, I'm an ex-con. You can't go knock on the door of a high school and say, I just got out of prison, I want to talk to your kids, right? They'll throw you out. So there weren't a lot of places for me to go speak. My sponsor in AA, he saw that I was kind of spiraling, because the plan that I had in prison this whole time of transforming myself and sharing my story to help other people, it wasn't happening for me. And he pulls me aside one day. He said, you got to go serve, man. You got to find a service work project. And I was like, well, Ray, the same guy that showed me the Serenity Prayer thing. I'm like, Ray, what do you want me to do, man? I'm ex-con. No one wants me, because it's not true, Damon. He said, go to a senior citizen center around here in Southeast Texas, anywhere. Just pick one. Go to the front desk this weekend and ask them for a list of visitors. Ask them for a list of people who never get visitors. He said they're going to give you a list a mile long. Some of those people got dropped off at those senior citizen centers and got forgotten about. He said, I want you to spend your Saturday and Sunday going in there and visiting with old people who don't get visitors anymore, and come back on Monday and tell me about your problems again. So my first service work project wasn't going around speaking and sharing the coffee bean. It was going around to these senior citizen centers, and man, I got to spend time with some people in there. Some of these people hadn't had a visitor in 10 years. No one to sit there and listen to them, man. I lived in an institution, man. Institution living is hard. It's the only place where you're never alone, but you're always lonely. And I went back that next Monday, and I told Ray, I said, I get it, man. I understand. He said something that was so valuable for me to understand my place in this world. He said, if we could all throw our problems onto a pile, and we could go onto that pile, and we could pick up anybody's else problem we want, we'd probably go grab our problem, throw it back over our shoulder. When you see what other people carry around with them, man, you'll want your problems back. And that was certainly true in my life. I always look for the opportunity in the university, and the opportunity I had when I got out of prison is in my parents' spare bedroom where I lived, because I lived in my parents' spare bedroom for the first 2 years. Doesn't make for a good dating profile site, right?
Yeah.
But, in my parents' spare bedroom, there's a mirror in there, little vanity mirror. Just happened to be when I moved in. Every night for 2 years, I practiced my presentation in front of that mirror, the coffee bean. I got my reps in. I got good. Anything you want to be good at in life, Jake, you got to get in your reps. You got to practice for it, because there's no such thing as an overnight success. It doesn't exist. Again, the people that meet me today, they're meeting a guy that was born inside of a prison, because this guy didn't start when I got out of prison. So I'm getting my reps in, practicing my presentation, and I think that the right opportunity is going to come to me from the world of college football, because I played Division I college football. But the problem is it's been 20 years to take a snap. These coaches don't know me, and I don't know them. January 11th, 2017, I've been out of prison 14 months. A buddy of mine calls me up from Houston. He says, hey, Damon, get to Houston right now. Houston's 90 miles away. He works in the media. He said, get to Houston right now. It's the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year Award. They're going to name the best college football coach in America, the 8 best coaches in the country in this room right now. I've got an extra press pass. I'm sneaking you in. So I drive the 90 miles from Beaumont to Houston, man. He sneaks me in the back door of Toyota Center. And there I am in this room, with all these coaches, USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, PJ Fleck. They're all there. And I'm running up to these coaches, Jake. I'm shaking their hand. I'm giving my pitch of why they should bring me in to talk to their team. And every coach I meet that night slams the door in my face. They all say no. In 1 hour, I've been told no 7 times by the 8 coaches in the room. It was a no every 8 minutes. It was a bloodbath, man. I'm standing in the corner of Toyota Center, man. I'm licking my wounds. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm 10 feet from the door, and the voice in my head is screaming at me, go home. The voice in my head said, Damon, you don't even belong in this room. You're an ex-con. You're an imposter. I think everybody listening to this right now, you've heard the imposter voice before. Don't listen to it. The voice in your head is fear talking to you sometimes. You shouldn't listen to the voice. You should talk to yourself. Don't listen to yourself. That night, I'm telling myself in the corner, get back out there, Damon. That last coach has got to tell you no to your face before you're going home. And Jake, the last coach, he's the hardest guy to get you in the room. His team had just beat Alabama 2 nights before for the national championship. Everybody wants this guy's time. Everybody wants a picture with this guy. But I remind myself, you survived prison, Damon. This isn't prison. I'm applying perspective on what a bad day looks like, right? So I stalked Dabo Swinney around this room, the head coach at Clemson. And I look like a crazy person, man. I'm hiding behind fake plans. I'm pushing a few people out of the way. Dabo sees me, and security sees me too. Yeah, they're going to throw me out of Toyota Center that night, but I get in front of Dabo. I get my best stuff, and I come up for air, and Dabo looks freaked out. He's like, man, you got a card on you? I was like, man, I've seen that look before, but I gave him my card. He took it from me. He said, I'll check you out, and he was gone. So that was a no. It looked like a no, felt like a no, but I felt good about that no, man, because that no meant that I left it all on the field. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned from sports. You give it your best. Sometimes you lose. Or like Muhammad said, you don't have to win all your fights. You got to fight all your fights, right? I went home that night. I fought my fights. I slept like a baby. Forgot about that night. 4 months later, I get an email out of the blue. The director of football operations at Clemson University, a guy named Mike Dooley. Mike Dooley's email said this: hey, Damon, Coach Swinney met you at a award show in Houston. He would love to have you come talk to his team. Do you have August 1st open? I'm like, I got every first open, Mike. I got nothing going on in 2017. So August 1st, 2017, less than 2 years out of prison, I'm standing in front of the defending national champions of college football. After the presentation night, Dabo's in my face, and Dabo's a high-energy guy. That's the most amazing story I've ever heard, Damon. I've never seen my players respond like that to a speaker. He said, have you been to Alabama to talk to their football team? No, Dabo. I've been to Clemson. Yeah. But I hadn't been anywhere. He said, we'll see about that. He said, I just text Saban from the back of the room. Next day, Saban's guy from Alabama calls me. Hey, man, Dabo called Coach Saban. Coach Saban can't wait to hear your story. How does August 21st, 7:30 p.m. work for your calendar? Wow. I don't even have a calendar. I'm like, that's great, man. I'll be there, right? Just like that, Dabo Swinney kicks open the biggest door to college football. And Dabo doesn't stop there. Kirby Smart, Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly, Lane Kiffin, Ryan Day, every coach in America is blowing my phone up. When are you coming to talk to my team? Dabo became the guy that was
took a shot.
Yeah, took a shot on me, man. He was the one yes in a room full
of
no's.
And all you need is one guy.
All you need is one, and that's where this story's going, man, because Dabo Swinney did one more big thing after that. He introduced me to a guy named John Gordon. Now, John Gordon calls me up the next year in 2018. He said, Damon, I was just in Dabo's office. He told me your story. He told me about the coffee bean. And John's one of the biggest motivational speakers and authors in America. He said, Damon, write a book with me. We'll call it The Coffee Bean. The summer of 2019, The Coffee Bean comes out, takes the entire world by storm. Bestseller list in America for like a month. Goes overseas, gets a global publishing deal. Global publishing deals are rare, Jake. Your book gets reprinted in every language in the world. The year 2020, a global pandemic hits. The entire world becomes this pot of boiling water, and the entire world is searching for the right message. And guess where so many people landed? The Coffee Bean guy. Jake, my life goes like this to this, and it hadn't stopped. Since 2021, I've been on the road 20 to 25 days every month sharing the Coffee Bean message somewhere around the world. But it all goes back to that one night in Houston, Texas. Remember that night that I had 7 no's in the first hour? And I'm 10 feet from the door. Jake, I was this close to listen to the voice in my head. Because what are the odds Dabo's going to tell me yes, right? And I'm an ex-con. The low value that I have of myself. But if I walk out that door that night, we're not having this conversation today, and the world doesn't have the Coffee Bean message. So what I'm telling everybody listening to that story is this. You don't give up on your hopes, your goals, and your dream. You don't quit because things get tough. You don't throw in the towel when life gets hard. You don't not ask your questions in life. The only question you know the answer to in life is the one you don't ask. That answer is no every time. Wayne Gretzky said it best, Jake. Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you do not take. You got to take your shots, man.
I love it, man. I got one question.
What you got?
Especially for the listener. Obviously, to become a coffee bean is a choice every single day. That your feet hit that concrete floor, or you wake up in the morning, you're making a choice to be a coffee bean. But how do you remain a coffee bean through all of the trials and tribulations? Because I know every day isn't easy, especially in an environment like prison. And everybody's not on the same page with wanting to be a coffee bean. So how do you remain a coffee bean, even facing the adversity that's going to come your way every single day?
So that's a very good question. And the answer is this. You're not going to be a coffee bean every day. You're going to have days where you're the carrot. Being a carrot's being sad. That's a natural human emotion that God gave you were born with. You're going to be the carrot sometimes. It's okay to be the carrot sometimes. Feel your pain. Pain demands to be felt. There are going to be days that you are the egg. Because remember what Muhammad said. You know, you find more eggs in life because the egg is a natural evolution of any human being in any difficult situation. The eggs are the days where you're angry, you're mad, people irritate you. In a prison environment, that can happen pretty fast, pretty easy, especially in the summer months if you're in a place with no air conditioning, right? Eggs are everywhere. You're going to be the egg too. It's okay to be the egg sometimes. Pain demands to be felt. But the trick is, don't get stuck in your pain because you have a third choice. We all have a third choice. Be like the coffee bean. The coffee bean changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. The coffee bean knows that no matter what time of day it is, you can start your day over anytime you want. Doesn't matter if it's when you get up. It could be noon. It could be 4 p.m. Having a bad day, hit the pause button. Take a step back. Take a deep breath. Tell life, I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to be the carrot. I'm not going to be the egg. Then jump in the pot of boiling water called life and just let life know you're going to be a coffee bean. Being a coffee bean is also about your faith. You have to have faith. It's a big universe out there. You can't do this on your own. And there's a saying that says there's not a lot of atheists in foxholes, and that's true. And if you're in prison, you're in a foxhole. That's as much of a foxhole as there's ever been. Here's the deal. You're looking down the barrel of a lifetime that you've got. Even if you're going to get out, you're looking down the barrel of a lifetime. How do you make the right choices and do the right thing for the rest of your life? Because that's what we're up against as ex-cons. 3 words I tell my students in my classes. You know, this criminal justice class that I taught at University of Houston for 3 years, I tell them punishment never stops. And what that means is that you could take a guy like Damon West, a success story in every metric, right? Husband, father, businessman, philanthropist, you know, just name it. I've been able to do it. But if I had to go get a job tomorrow, there's a lot of jobs I can't get because I'm going to check this little box that says I'm an inmate or I committed a felony at one point. But when you understand the world of punishment never stops, you understand that everything you have to do is put under a microscope and you got to do the next right thing. You know, one of the biggest questions I ever get from people is, have you found Muhammad? Where's Muhammad? And so the thing about Muhammad is it's very hard to find him. Muhammad's not his real name. It's his Muslim name. But I got a letter from an inmate in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice 3 years ago. Told me who he was. His name was James Lane Baker II. So I went to Dallas trying to find James Lane Baker with a private investigator and found out James Lane Baker II had passed away. He died of an opiate overdose on May 9th, 2017. So as of this recording, he's been dead for 8 years. I went and found his family because I thought that his family needs to understand what he did in my life, right? Because everybody deserves redemption. I learned from being a coffee bean, and this is going to roundabout answer your question. We are all here for each other in this life. Servant leadership. Whenever James Lane Baker, Muhammad, gave me the coffee bean in 2009 in Dallas County Jail, he wasn't just giving it to me so that I could become the best version of me and become a redeemed man. He was also giving it to me so I could come back and redeem him. Today, the legacy of this man who had no legacy before that, you know, this guy that had been in and out of prison all of his life, he burned bridges with his family everywhere he went, dies of an opiate overdose in 2017. Today, because of this turnaround story, he's known as the coffee bean guy. He was the original coffee bean guy. His family looks up to him now. His family adores him.
Wow.
They talk about the change he made. But none of this is going to be about you. It's about what you can do for other people. And that's how you get out of your bad day. You're having a tough day. Find ways to serve other people. Look for someone else struggling their day. When we get into someone else's problems, we get out of our own. And that's one of the things I can tell you about working in program recovery. So much about working in program recovery is about service work, serving other people, getting outside yourself, because no one that ever worked in successful program recovery was inside self.
I love it. Speaking directly to the listeners that are incarcerated right now, like I think that the system was originally designed for everyone to become the carrot. I think what they found is that people became the egg. And I just think to myself, in a world where we have an opportunity to become the coffee bean, and not just one person that's listening to this right now, but what if every one of our listeners became the coffee bean, and what would that do to transform the prison system? I think the expectation is that you're either going to become a carrot or you're going to become an egg. And the egg is obviously going to keep you there for the remainder of your life.
Yeah.
But if we all became the coffee bean, like what would the world look like? And especially for Jesus, man, like that's obviously the foundation of everything that we do. But if revival was ever going to take place throughout the world, I'm a huge believer, and the Bible is full of evidence that shows this, that God is going to use the least of these to have the largest impact. And if we all chose today to become the coffee bean, to smile, to respond in love in every aspect of what we do, to walk in humility, and to put Jesus Christ first in our life, that literally revival could leave those prison walls and ripple throughout the world. And it's being the coffee bean. It's the choice every single day that I'm going to be different. I'm not going to be a product of my environment. I'm going to be different, and I'm going to influence the world. The world is not going to influence me.
Correct. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on your podcast so badly, because I know that you have a lot of reach in the prison system. And how better to get this coffee bean message out there than to come on the podcast where people are coming to. This is the source, man. They're coming to it for hope. They're coming to it for spiritual enrichment. And this coffee bean message belongs on your platform because so many people are listening. What if everybody takes this message and say, you know what, in my unit, we're going to become coffee beans. I'm going to be that example of what Christ looks like. But here's the deal. Whether you call it being a coffee bean, whether you call it being a good Christian, don't tell me what you're going to be. Show me what you're going to be, all right? You're a Christian? You're a coffee bean? Good. Show me those things that show up in red ink in the New Testament. Show me love. Show me compassion. Show me mercy. Show me trust. Show me forgiveness. And when someone wrongs you, show me that stuff in the red ink that says, he who without sin cast the first stone. Show me these things. Because honestly, sometimes I can't hear what you're saying because your actions speak so loudly. Your actions and your words have to match up. But when that happens, man, now you're living in the source, man.
Well, and just like the idea of redemption and what Christ shows as we finish up this podcast, obviously God has redeemed a lot in your life, your relationship with your parents, the success that he's given you through the speaking opportunities and the new businesses and all of that. But one of the most important things, I think, to everybody is to feel redeemed by those that we've offended. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast that as much as you would want to reach out and say sorry, you're not allowed to reach out and say sorry. But just how good God is, there was an email that you received from one of your victims, and that he was able to redeem your heart through that email.
Yeah, I want to share this with everybody because, man, everybody in prison, we all have victims. Anybody in prison's got a victim, right? And what I mean by that is, too, is like even if you're there on a drug charge, your victim may be your kids, maybe your mom and your dad. Somebody's your victim. And in my case, I have a lot of victims. I broke into a lot of people's houses. Now, no one was ever home. Never saw my victims. I never saw them in person. They didn't see me. No one got hurt. But, again, I didn't just steal people's property. I stole their sense of security. And in Texas, they do have a law that says you can't apologize to your victims. So I'll never make an apology to my victims because to do that would cause me harm. In my program recovery that I work, the 8th step says that we make a list of all the people we've harmed. The 9th step says that we become willing to make the amends to everybody on that list, except when to do so would cause them or me harm. So they have a thing called a living amends. Now, I want everybody to listen to understand what a living amends looks like, because if you got a victim and you can't make an apology, here's your living amends. Living amends means you go out and do good deeds and you expect nothing in return. Nothing in return. Nothing at all. And so that's what I've been doing my entire life. When I, in prison, out of prison, I've been doing these living amends. And when you live like that, God will do for you what you can't do for yourself. I did this news story in Dallas, and after the news story was over, I got 2 emails that night. The first email was from one of the detectives that took me down. Wasn't a very positive email, you know. He didn't really believe the guy he saw on TV was different than the guy that he arrested in 2008. And you know what? I understood where he was coming from. You know, he represented society. I broke the social contract. I broke the rules of society. I violated people's sense of security. He represented society when he arrested me, and he is entitled to his opinion. But here's what I want to tell everybody out there. Other people's opinions of you are none of your business. Don't worry about what other people think of you. So that email, I didn't respond to it because I'm not a criminal. He has no more power over me. So I let that go. The other email was one that really caught me off guard. It was from a name I didn't recognize. And the subject line of the email said, Damon, I forgive you. Jake, this was from the biggest victim of my crime spree, man. This is, and I won't go into the details of it, but we stole something from her that was pretty valuable. Something she can't get back. And this email starts out, she's telling me about coming into her apartment that day. When she sees that place has been broken in, she darts right for the safe, and it's gone. What I stole from her. And so she got through the pain and got to the healing. And this is what she said. And I'm gonna try to make it through the whole thing. With that, Damon, I'd like to say, I forgive you. I'm moving on in the hope that you're a genuine person with a good heart. And the hope that you put others before money or fame as you share your story. And the hope that you and your family never experience great loss or violation. Most importantly, in the hope that you feel peace in knowing that we are saved from the mistakes we make in this world, thanks to the unfailing love of Christ. Life is such a gift. May you live it to the fullest, Damon.
Wow.
My first call that night was to my parole officer because that's what I've got to do when I get, a victim reaches out to me. She's like, you can't respond to her. I was like, I know. And she said, yeah, this is good. You get to feel that. That's good. She reached out to you. And the next call I made was to my sponsor, Ray. And I told him what I had to read the email to him. Ray's a dinosaur. He has a flip phone still. He's an old man with a flip phone. So I read him the email. And he said, look at that, Damon. That's a program at work. God did for you what you couldn't do for yourself. And he let me go, And that's the beautiful thing about life, Jake. And that's what I want to leave everybody with on this note, is that if this person could forgive me for what I did to her, and this is the person I thought about the crime every day I was in prison. It was like a toxic companion that I brought with me. I felt like it was my penance. I had to carry this guilt around. If this person could let it go with me and forgive me, then what do you hold on to with someone else? What have you not forgiven in someone else? What if you're not forgiven about yourself, You got to let it go. What she said is true. We're all guaranteed that through Christ. Let it go. Resentments are the number one offender of why people go back out and use drugs or drink again. The number one offender. Because when you have a resentment, it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. The person, the place, the institution that you resent usually doesn't know that you resent it. And when they find out, they don't care. The resentment does bother you, though. It hurts you and it holds you back in life.
Well, I think, too, is just like accepting, right? Accepting forgiveness is something that we all have to become really great at. I think often that we acknowledge forgiveness, but do you ever fully accept it? And I even see that in people's relationships with Christ, like those that become extremely legalistic, those that become extremely regiment and disciplined to where it's more of a religion than it is a relationship, is that they struggle with accepting that the debt has been paid and that forgiveness has been given. And there's nothing else that you can possibly do other than to accept what Christ did for you on that cross. He died. He was buried. He was rose again from the death for your sins, and accepting that fully in your heart, knowing that he is the only one that can redeem any of your past.
Right.
And that God line and then where your 1 inch line ends is right there. Yeah. What happens from this point forward of accepting him as your Lord and Savior is completely on his line. And anything that you've done or will do will be redeemed through him and only him.
100%. And if he can forgive you, then who are you to not forgive someone else? You know? And, you know, my life is the reason why the guy called me the modern day Shawshank and a real life Andy Dufresne. And I pushed back against that reporter that said that. Like, Andy was innocent. I was guilty, man. I did everything they said I did. Andy was an innocent guy that gets into prison. But I know what the reporter meant. Andy brought hope. Andy was the face of hope. And I accept Jake in this life. I've become the face of hope for so many men and women that are incarcerated. And as the face of hope, I want you to be able to touch your dream, and I want you to be able to write me. I got a P.O. box. Can I give my P.O. box to the listeners?
Yeah.
So this is my P.O. box, and it's for anybody that's incarcerated, write me. My P.O. box is P.O. Box 1451, Nederland, Nederland, Texas, 77627. So that's my P.O. box. If you'd like to write me, I'll write you back. Sometimes it takes me a little while. I'm on the road a lot, but I take letters with me. I got them in my bag right now. I got letters I got to write. I'll do it on airplanes and stuff like that. But I want you to be able to have communication with someone that's been there before and walked that path. And that's what life is about, man, that path that someone else has already paved. You don't have to go out and build a road. The road's already there, man. Christ has already built the road for you. Just get on it, man. Get on his back and let him walk the road with you.
Last question, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. You're obviously already living your legacy, but at the end of your life, hopefully much more life to live, what's the legacy you want to leave?
Man, 2 words, servant leader. That's what I want people to say. That guy went out as a servant leader, man. I think that when we live a life of servant leadership, everything else takes care of itself. Because I believe that a true servant leader lives by faith. And, you know, faith without works is dead. And so you got to go out and live that every single day, man. You got to pour into that. So servant leader, that's the simple legacy I want to leave. I believe that the old guy, the old Damon West, is dead. I left him inside of a prison. But if I don't work a program recovery every single day, that guy can come back, man. And so I want to tell every addict out there, if you're struggling, any addict needs a program recovery. You got to find something, man. And when you find it, live it, work it, man. Get that program and work it hard. And it's your faith. Work your faith hard. Live out those words in the red ink in the New Testament, man. Live those out. If you live those out, life is easy.
Love it. Well, Damon, this has been amazing. And if you're listening, this is a master class, literally a master class on how you can become the best version of you. I appreciated the conversation today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Can I tell people where to get my new book?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I just, it was time for me to write my memoir and give it. It's called 6 Dimes and a Nickel, and it's available now on Amazon for pre-order.
And what does 6 dimes and a nickel mean?
6 dimes and a nickel means 65 years in prison slang. So I bet everybody listens like, oh, man, I know what that means. It's 65 years, right? That's what the jury gave me. It's all the life lessons from a life sentence. The book starts off with a question. The question is, if someone took control of your life tomorrow, what's the first thing they would change? The good thing is, if you're sitting in a prison right now, listen to this, someone did take control of your life. That state's correctional system does control your life. What's the first thing you're going to change? Or have you already started to change? And if you hadn't, why not? I believe people resist change because change is tough. Change is difficult. It's scary, right? It gets us out of our comfort zone. But, Jake, that's the best place to navigate towards, outside your comfort zone. That's where change takes place. Nothing big ever happens in comfort zones. Get uncomfortable, grow, and change. But 6 dimes and a nickel, man. It's available on Amazon right now for pre-order. And, I'd be grateful if anybody bought the book.
Yeah, both books, right?
The Change Agent, I've got several books. This will be the 6th book I've written.
Okay.
The Change Agent's my first one, and that's my life story. That's the story inside of prison. But 6 dimes and a nickel really is the whole life story. It's all the life lessons from a life sentence. And the reason why I say life lessons from a life sentence, because I'm still living my life sentence. I'm on parole the rest of my life. Every lesson I learn out here is still a lesson from my life sentence.
I love it. Well, thank you. Make sure you get the book for sure. But thank you for being here. And
thank you for having me, Jay.
Just the amazing wisdom that you poured out during this conversation.
Grateful to share the coffee we messed on your platform, brother. I love what you're doing, man. Keep doing it.
Thank you.
People need it.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. And I just want to thank you as a listener for your continued support and encourage you to share this with as many of your friends and family as possible. It is our heart and goal to tell the story of what God is doing behind bars with as many people as possible. And so as you share this amongst your friends and family and on your social networks, it allows us and supports that goal. Number 2 is, if you would love to make a gift to God Behind Bars to help us continue the work and to grow the platform of what's happening here as a ministry, I want to encourage you to go over to godbehindbars.com/donate. And no matter what you can give, it all helps in making the mission and vision of introducing as many people to Jesus as we possibly can and connecting them to the local church. And so thank you so much again for being a listener. And we pray that this encourages you just as much as you've been an encouragement to us.